5D Mystery School.
5D Mystery School, let's get into it. Now yesterday I made a video about how artificial rain is created, and it got me thinking, which is my favorite thing to do. So weather modification is public knowledge at this point. And China has been a little bit more open about it than our country has. So I started to think, how is lightning produced? Pause to read, but essentially lightning is a naturally occurring electrostatic discharge, which in turn creates a wide range of electromagnetic radiation. And here it breaks down the different types of lightning. And then of course in the past, lightning has been deified. A more modern deity of lightning is of course Thor. A more ancient reference would be of course Zeus. Now pause to read this point. I want to point out this part. Cloud-to-cloud flashes are very difficult to study given there are no physical points to monitor inside the clouds, even though we're told that rain comes from a physical point inside the clouds. Now when we see lightning, it looks like the source is coming from the clouds. Here's another photo. It even happens during volcano eruptions, and this would be the aforementioned cloud-to-ground lightning. Speaking of cloud-to-ground lightning, Thor is symbolic, right? He comes from Asgard. Now as you can see pictured here, Asgard is above the firmament. Which brings me to sprites. Now sprites happen above the clouds, and as you can see, they look like lightning strikes. Here's another. Now this is an actual drawing from the NASA website trying to explain to you how thunder and lightning works. So we covered that lightning is electromagnetic radiation, so let's break down what this means. Pause to read, but electromagnetic radiant energy includes radio waves, microwaves, infrared, visible light, ultraviolet light, X-rays, and gamma rays. Now the sun is a form of ultraviolet light electromagnetic radiation, and you're also familiar with other forms of electromagnetic radiation. Now, EM waves can carry energy from the source particle and can impart those quantities to matters which they interact, which is why lightning produces thunder. The EM radiation creates a sonic shock wave, which we call thunder. Certain radiations have the ability to cause chemical reactions, which is why people get sunburned. As you can see, radiation from the sun is a mixture of electromagnetic waves ranging from infrared to ultraviolet rays. So you can say most of our reality is composed of photons. Photons is the quantum of the electromagnetic field, including electromagnetic radiation such as light and radio waves. So these sprites are coming from an electromagnetic field, like for part 2. 5D Mystery School, Lightning Part 2, let's get into it. Now, where does lightning truly come from? Well, several different ancient civilizations believe that we live inside of a firmament. Modern day philosophers and truth seekers like myself also believes the same thing. Now, if there were a firmament above us, that means that these sprites and lightning strikes would be coming from the firmament. And since lightning is electromagnetic radiation, then you can consider the source to be electromagnetic, like a field. Now this might explain why everything we perceive in this reality that has to do with electricity is on the spectrum, and its source is electromagnetic, even our own sun. And we've seen that this technology can be replicated. So when the skies are looking like this, where's the lightning coming from? Or is reality simulated? Okay, so before I let you go, I have one more point. If clouds are made up of water droplets, and lightning comes from clouds, supposedly, even though there are no physical points to monitor inside the clouds. The question is, can water produce electricity? The answer is yes, with hydroelectric power. But the way a hydroelectric plant works, for example, is by a turbine propeller. Falling rainwater moves that turbine propeller, in turn creating electricity. Well, how are these clouds, which are composed of water droplets, creating electricity known as lightning? There are no turbine propellers, especially when the clouds are artificial. A logical conclusion would be that the lightning aren't actually coming from the clouds, like we were taught, but rather the lightning is coming from above the clouds, from an electromagnetic field known as the firmament. And NASA did the best attempt they could with the scribbles to explain it to us. So are all of these natural occurrences simulated like our clouds? You decide.
5D Mystery School.
Welcome back to 5D Mystery School, Deciphering Reality, Weather. Let's get into it. So before I move on, just want to point this out. Keep your head on the swivel. So, if you like this photo, I took it. If our weather is being manufactured, who's creating it? Artificial rain, snow, and lightning and thunder. We can create an artificial sun and a moon. So what you think about those stars? So in order to produce artificial weather, one must first get a patent. So let's take a look at some of these patents to substantiate some outrageous claims that you might have a hard time believing. So here's a patent for a method of producing rainfall. That was in 1891. And as you can see, there are over 150 patents registered with the U.S. Patent Office for weather modification. Here's a patent for the creation of artificial ionization of clouds above the Earth. HARP is a tool that they use to implement artificial weather. Now, the part of this patent that I really want you to ingrain in your memory is circularly polarized electromagnetic radiation is transmitted upward in a direction substantially parallel to and along a field line, which extends through the region of plasma to be altered. The radiation is transmitted at a frequency in which excites electron-cyclotron resonance to heat and accelerate the charged particles. Don't forget that part. Here's another patent for hurricane and tornado control device. Here's a patent for powder contrail generation, aka chemtrails. Here's a patent for intelligent systems for weather modification programs. Now, I really want you to remember their major aluminum tolerance gene, submate gene, encodes a root citrate efflux transporter that is AI inductible at the level of gene transcription. It is also AI activated at the level of protein function. In layman's terms, supposedly it could be nanobots found in a jab. And now, like I mentioned, check out this patent. There also have been whistleblowers. Now pause to read this patent. To create or induce lightning or light speed or visible to the naked eye electromagnetic pulse or pulses. These aren't really opinions. These are patents, which makes them facts. And you can look these all up on Google Patents. If you would like a further explanation, just pause to read. Essentially, you can use lightning and thunder to act as an aid in the art of war. And you could have guessed that he was involved with the geoengineering weather. But we can too. Now you might be asking yourself, how are so many people oblivious to this? How does it go over their head? Well, here's a patent for subliminal acoustic manipulation of the nervous system. Your nervous system controls everything. Like for the next part of this lecture. Welcome back to 5D Mystery School, Deciphering Reality, Weather. Now, we can't talk about weather modification without discussing how the masses are intentionally controlled. Did I say controlled? Yeah, I mean controlled to believe otherwise. Now, let's focus on one tool that they use to keep the masses going. Who cares? What does it matter? Y'all be saying that a lot. Now, patent 6017302A. Now, I made a video about these towers, and a lot of people in the comments were in disbelief. Roll the footage.
Ask yourself, why would they disguise the 5G towers as trees if they weren't harmful?
As you can see, in human subjects, sensory resonances can be excited by subliminal atmospheric acoustic pulses that are turned to the resonance frequency. And it is believed that these things can also be like weaponized. This could possibly explain why 5G interrupts the functionality of planes. Now let's get into the technical aspects of weather modification. Let's start here. Chemistry. Chemistry is derived from Kemet. You might know it as Egypt. Chemistry comes from alchemy. I'll explain this further when I do a lecture about the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. Chemistry, meaning transmutation of earth, is the science of matter at the atomic to molecular scale, dealing primarily with the collection of atoms. Let's stop at atoms. But first, let's start with matter. In classical physics and general chemistry, matter is any substance that has mass and takes up space by having volume. Now, if you go back to my firmament lecture, I proved how E equals mc squared is wrong. Well, more like needs to be rethought. Anyway, all day, everyday objects that can be touched are ultimately composed of atoms, which are made up of interacting subatomic particles. In everyday as well as scientific usage, matter generally includes atoms and anything made up of them, and any particles or combination of particles. Okay, an atom is the smallest unit of ordinary matter that forms a chemical element. Every solid, liquid, gas, and plasma is composed of neutral or ionized atoms. Remember plasma and remember ionization. The electrons of an atom are attracted to the protons in an atomic nucleus by the electromagnetic force. The protons and neutrons in the nucleus are attracted to each other by the nuclear force. An example of the electromagnetic force would be lightning. An example of nuclear force would be nuclear power plants or nuclear bombs. Now remember, any atom that contains 29 protons is copper. What color does copper burn? Hold on to that answer. Now, in physical sciences, a subatomic particle is a particle that is smaller than an atom. A subatomic particle can be either a composite particle, which is composed of other particles, for example, proton, neutron, electron, photon. Photons are light, right? All around you. Light is photons. When somebody takes a photo of you, they're just taking a snapshot of the composition of photons at that present time. Experiments show that light could behave like a stream of particles called photons. By you looking at this video, you're looking at the artificial version of photons, which is called pixels. Now, pause to read. Now, ionization is a process by which an atom or molecule acquires a negative or positive charge by gaining or losing electrons. The resulting electrically charged atom is called an ion. Now, ionization can result from the loss of an electron after collisions with subatomic particles, collisions with other atoms, molecules, and ions, or through the interaction with electromagnetic radiation. Now, as you recall, we went over electromagnetic radiation earlier in this lecture. Now, again, pause to read. Now, an electromagnetic field is produced by accelerating electric charges, and we've already covered what those electric charges are at a subatomic and molecular level. Now, the electromagnetic field propagates at the speed of light. Its quantum counterpart is one of the four fundamental forces of nature. This field can be viewed as a combination of electric and magnetic field. The electric field is produced by stationary charges and the magnetic field by moving charges. I'm not going to get into quantum mechanics now, but you can see this is going to go more into a simulation. But a small example would be the X matrix, which is an example of the distant future and the distant past. But we're going to save that for another lecture. Now, plasma. Remember, plasma is one of the four fundamental states of matter. It contains a significant portion of charged particles, ions, and/or electrons. Electrons have a negative charge, protons have a positive charge, neutrons have a neutral charge. The presence of these charged particles is what primarily sets plasma apart from the other fundamental states of matter. It is the most abundant form of ordinary matter in the universe, being mostly associated with stars, including the sun. Ingrain this in your memory. Plasma can be artificially generated by heating a neutral gas or subjecting it to a strong electromagnetic field. For the advanced students in the class, you know where I'm going with this. Now, the polar wind or plasma fountain is a permanent outflow of plasma from the polar regions of Earth's magnetic sphere. Now, remember ionization. The solar wind ionizes gas molecules in the upper atmosphere to such high energy that some of them reach escape velocity and pour into space. And remember, space is just a period of time. A considerable percentage of these ions remain bound inside Earth's magnetic field, where they form part of the radiation belts. In astronomy and planetary science, a magnetosphere is a region of space surrounding an In astronomy and planetary science, a magnetosphere is a region of space surrounding an astronomical object in which charged particles are affected by that object's magnetic field. By the way, we're just going by what they teach, but I like to break it down as I go. Now, you've seen these before, the aurora borealis. Now, why do you think that they only show in the Arctic and Antarctic regions? Hold that answer. The resulting ionization and excitation of atmospheric constituents emit light of varying color and complexity, aka. Now, I started off with the patents just so you can comprehend how it's technological possible within our means to make artificial weather. In order to usher in 5D, the total deconstruction of 3D needs to transpire. And we out here, starseeds activated. So with the information given, can you make a educated guess as to what stars are composed of? What are stars? But if you stick with what you were taught, then that's totally fine too. Do you have a better understanding of the forces of nature and how they're created? I mean, these patents date back to 1891. Now, what are the chances that the implementation of this technology has caused Mandela effects, including CERN? You see, they allegedly developed this technology and then introduced it into society in very subtle ways. One example would be developing the technology to send subliminal messages. So people are hearing voices. You start hearing schizophrenic commercials, and then Big Pharma medicates you. Another alleged example would be to increase the radiation in certain communities and then call the side effects from the exposure of that radiation a sickness or pandemic, allegedly. And then creating a jab for that sickness and introducing nanotechnology into the body, and also altering that person's DNA. Essentially, at that point, you are connected to the cloud. Your nanobots can interact with the nanobots that are being dropped in the sky, aka smart dust. Allegedly. It's all interconnected. Speaking of connected, a next phase would be something like maybe making you part of the system by inserting a transmitter inside of your brain, and then in turn causing your vision to perceive augmented reality. Allegedly. The land is modified, the food is modified, the weather is modified, animals are modified, everything modified. So what's left? Us? You decide. Like and follow for more. I love you. Peace.
5D Mystery School.
Welcome back to 5D Mystery School. So this is just a bonus video for the lecture Deciphering Reality, Weather. Let's call this part A. Let's get into it. So here is a patent for weather modification conducted by artificial satellites. Pause to read if you would like to read more about these satellites for weather modification. So normally when I talk to somebody about satellites, they're perceiving these satellites to be in outer space. A typical question would be, how many satellites are there in space? And when SpaceX are releasing these satellites for Starlink, where are these satellites going? Now again, the typical answer is most believe that they are in space, outer space. Now when you see stories like this or stories like Elon Musk launched a car in space, most people think that those objects are in outer space. And let's be honest, most people's perception of the Earth is still like this, still a round spinning ball. So when NASA releases all these satellites, or the International Space Station, or the Hubble telescope, where are they going? Again, in my own experience from engaging in dialogue about this, the average answer is people think that these things are just floating in outer space, when in actuality, they're just in lower Earth orbit. Side note, most of these movies coming out really are just low-key documentaries for our reality, hidden in plain sight, like Flat Plane. Okay, so people think that these satellites are in outer space, right? And we can see here that there's a patent for weather modification by artificial satellites. Now, who's launching these satellites and where are they being launched from? Well, NASA places 56.5 million order for 5-year helium supply. Well, what does helium have to do with satellites? Well, if you were thinking that, that's a great question. Let's get into it. Now, you would think that is for their balloon program that they have here on the website. Allegedly, this could be a cover. But what are they really doing with the helium? Now, what we've just witnessed in this video is that this helium supply is used to launch satellites, and they may or may not be launched in Antarctica. Alright, so moving on and closing out. This is your magnetic field. This is your magnetic field and of course your kundalini going up your spine. If you don't know about that, I would highly implore you to research more about it. I'll probably go more in depth in another lecture about that. And the reason why your magnetic field is important because there are patents to disrupt it. There's a patent to change your behavior, nervous system excitation. Pause to read the rest. You can see here that there's a patent to influence the subconscious mind through audio suggestion. And as you can see here, you can project sound into somebody's head. Okay, I have to finish this in another part. Deciphering Reality, Weather, Part 9. Now this patent is actually titled nervous system manipulation, which, as we covered before, is a key part in your body's functionality. And in order to manipulate your nervous system, you have to manipulate the magnetic field of your body. Well, how is that being done? Well, here are symptoms from radiation poisoning. Here are symptoms from COVID. It's almost like copy and paste. So in short, it's time to protect yourself from harmful radiation exposure. One way to do that is by using iodine. Of course, iodine can be found in sea moss, bladderwrack, sea kelp, salts like Celtic sea salt, some Himalayan salts. Get that. Think of it this way. Sunburn is just radiation burn, rebranded. But on the electromagnetic spectrum, that's coming from ultraviolet light. Talking about the radiation from the 5G in your backyard. Another way, you can get an element called shungite. Spiritually, it helps you protect from radiation. Like and follow for more. Love you. Peace.
5D Mystery School.